Today on the show, strategy plus action equals running your expert business with systems. Great coaches and consultants like you have the ability to change people's lives and transform entire organizations. And your impact can often go far beyond the clients you work with. One of the reasons I love working with coaches and consultants is because of that ripple effect. This show is here to highlight your expertise and empower you with resources and new ideas to grow your business. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Welcome to Strategy in Action. I'm your host, Jason Croft, and today on the show, Taylorr Payne is with us from SpeakerFlow. He and his business partner, Austin, have created this amazing solution for experts. Essentially, speakers, coaches, consultants, authors, these folks who, they're really smart, really, successful in what they're doing, but they don't have the solutions to run the business aspect of what they're doing. And we all know when that happens, then, even when we're successful, we have no time and we get just buried in all the administrative side of things or the technical or in the delivery, the invoicing, all of that stuff. And so what they've done with SpeakerFlow is created that solution for, folks in this industry that solves that massive pain point, but then also provide the coaching around all of this. So it's one thing to have these systems in place. It's another thing to have the right mindset when you go into using these systems to make your business better and to actually want it to grow because you can handle that growth. So we cover a lot of topics in this, including, the podcasts that they run, the marketing partnerships that they've got going on, all these things that they've done so expertly in growing SpeakerFlow. Really impressed with what they've built. So let's jump in with Taylorr Payne.
But I think SpeakerFlow got started 3 years ago, and the main mission for us was how can we elevate thought leaders' impact on the business end of things? Because we had heard from previous experiences. I was running a marketing agency in the past, paid ads, SEO, those types of things. And they asked, well, hey, a partner of ours, they said, well, could you market for this group of people? Because we were kind of like a generalist type of marketing agency. We'd work with anybody, e-commerce, home builders, roofers, you name it, basically. So somebody came across and said, hey, well, could you market for this group of people? Speakers, coaches, consultants. And we thought, why not? What could go wrong? These people make $10,000 to get on stage. They make $50,000 a consulting contract. It's bread and butter for a marketing agency because you can justify ROI extremely quickly. It's not like you have to sell 1 million courses at $197, for example. You're selling large ticket items. And so we thought, this is a perfect fit for what a marketing agency would want to serve as. And long story short, many of these people, I would say, go on to say maybe 98% of speakers, coaches, consultants are solopreneurs without any business systems whatsoever. They have very deep knowledge and expertise in one particular area or have one crazy story that they go out and inspire others by. And most of the time they just stumble into the whole thing. And now all of a sudden they've got a business to run. And what is a CRM? And how do you do email marketing? And how do I make my life suck less with all of the administrative stuff that comes around with running a business? Because honestly, business owners, and I'm included in this, but I have maybe an attraction towards technology more than others, but they're squirrel chasers. They're highly visionary, highly creative individuals that just want, exactly, you and I are in this bucket, that want to go do our thing that we do best and just focus on that thing. When we get into the weeds and we've got to click a bunch of buttons and do administrative tasking and do whatever it takes to run the business, that's when stuff goes sideways. And so what we've learned is that this group of people aren't even ready for complex marketing and sales strategies to grow their business. There's no systems in place, no CRM, no email marketing, no premise for lead nurturing, conversion, attraction, just all of it just non-existent. And so we got into asking the question, why is that? This group of people is so fun to work with. They all want to change the world in some way or another, get on stage and change lives, basically. So it was kind of fun to get them to be able to do more of that, especially from the marketing angle. But how do we solve this business systems piece, basically? Because we saw a lot of, passion in helping that group of people maybe amplify their voice. We thought, if we could get these speakers and experts rather out there doing more of what they do best because of actions we took, that's some cool way to like contribute to the betterment of the world, and it was a lot more motivating than just making people money just from like marketing, let's say.
Yeah,
And so we started to ask them that question.
Yeah, I've had that similar feeling too, right? Working with coaches and consultants, and it's that ripple effect that's not sort of that vague, oh yeah, I'll help this person and eventually down the road. Like, you're really truly helping a ton of people by helping this one person who goes out and changes lives or changes companies, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so we started asking them, like, what went wrong? Like, why aren't you thinking about this in terms of a business? Like, for crying out loud, speakers, if they label themselves as that only, they call it gigs. Like they're a garage band, it's not even a business. It's not a service that they're providing. They don't even label themselves as, I'm an expert in this, and I just so happen to speak and coach and consult. It's, I'm a consultant. I'm a speaker. Well, if we know anything about marketing, you don't label yourself by your revenue stream. You label yourself as the problem that you're solving for people. And that's what attracts people to you. So we kind of realized that there was this cognitive dissonance in the market of people not treating this like an actual business. And long and short of it is there's no one out there who helped these individuals create a box for how to treat this like a business, like an MBA of sorts, of what are the core business processes this type of business needs so that we can do more selling and more marketing and do more of it at scale without making our lives suck along the way. And even if you have a ton of business, because there are some speakers, let's acknowledge this, that just take off hundreds of gigs per year, full fee. And now they've got an administrative nightmare trying to manage it all, contracts and invoicing and tasks slipping through the cracks and travel logistics. I mean, it's a pretty complex business to run, especially if you have multiple revenue streams. And the long and short of it is no one was teaching this kind of core concept of how to have business systems and leverage those so you can create more impact. It was just, I want to stop spinning my wheels. I don't have traction. I want to just stay in my zone of genius. And that type of language. And at its core, it wasn't a sales or marketing problem necessarily. It was the fact that they didn't even have systems, a foundation in place to get to them to that level that they want to operate at.
So in working with that, because it started off, you mentioned, more of a marketing agency for folks. And then as you discovered that pain point, was that the big shift in the actual solution that you're even going to provide for these folks?
Yeah, honestly, like the marketing agency was just something we were running, as a separate company. It was serving a whole load of different clients. And it was an existential crisis, actually, that led us to me and my partner, Austin, creating SpeakerFlow. And it was largely because of what I mentioned earlier about marketing being extrinsically motivated. So what I mean by that is when you're a marketing agency, and there's no knock on any people who are out there and find passion in doing marketing for other businesses. I found that passion too at one point, but at some point I fell out of love with it, because after you kind of crack the code of how to make money online and how to generate leads and how to get people business, naturally the next thing that company wants is more business. How do I make more money? And you're just a cog in their machine in order to make them more money. And if that, for whatever reason, falls off the radar, or they stop making money during your process of marketing, all of a sudden they're pointing fingers, when actuality, it's probably something internal to their business that's causing the issue. But a marketing agency's job is only to generate leads, and our job is done after that point. And so I just found that I wasn't as passionate about just making people a bunch of money. Like that's fine, but for people who are only in it for the money, it just wasn't that exciting to me. And granted, many experts are also in it for the money. It's the highest paid profession in the world, thought leadership. However, there's much more intrinsic motivation to change the world. And I think that's why it's the highest paid profession in the world, is because the impact that they carry is so much larger. And so basically we're kind of stuck with this existential crisis of, damn, we hate running this marketing agency. How can we still provide impact for the people we like serving the most, knowing that marketing isn't the thing they needed? And because of our strength in systems, being an agency, you have to have systems everywhere in order to operate properly. And us identifying this gap, we started SpeakerFlow after some intensive market research and understanding what people were really looking for. And what we had learned is it wasn't even about having the systems, like the actual technology. It was about more than just tech. It was the process and the people they have in order to facilitate a system. And so often people think of systems as technology alone, and it's not. It's tech, process, and people. And those three things that come together is what allows your business to be on a conveyor belt of sorts, where you take the guesswork out of things. And so even if people had the right tech in place, the next logical question was like, well, what the hell do I do with this now? And that's where we learned that there's no business coaching that can bridge the gap between a really good business idea and how to plug this into a system so you can actually start getting results from it.
Wow. Yeah, because it's the mindset going into that. It's a systems mindset about it too.
That's right.
Plus splitting it into those three components instead of just the tech component, like you mentioned.
That's right.
Because there's, if they wanted to go down the path and find all the separate solutions, maybe they were there, but to even know to go down, to even know that those solutions are out there, yeah, that's a complete shift. And
let alone to set them up, like, could you imagine, like, how many apps do you need to run your business? Like, think about that for a minute, right? Like, I think at SpeakerFlow, we've probably got 30 or 40 different apps running our business, and we have to connect all of those dots. Like, for the average individual person with no business acumen to sort all of that out themselves, it's never going to get done.
It's hard enough when you like that stuff. And like you and I think fall in that category, like, that stuff's cool. Like, we actually like tech and this is neat stuff. And it's still hard. It still takes forever, right?
Well, and you have to honestly ask yourself a question, especially when you get to a point where we're at, like, is it worth my time clicking a bunch of buttons to figure this stuff out right now versus the impact I could be creating? And that's the dilemma these experts have. Like, I just want to create more content. I want to get on stage. I want to change lives, not click a bunch of buttons getting technology to work together and then figure out how to use it and then figure out what process I need. It's
so
worth the time.
So what was the first aspect? Because I know you're bringing these two aspects of SpeakerFlow together, which is coaching plus the technical solutions and everything. Right. What kind of came first in that?
Great question. So it was coaching primarily, because we didn't really know. I think we needed an operating system yet, although the writing was definitely on the wall if we were paying attention closely. But entrepreneurs, you just gotta wing it sometimes. So basically what we knew, though, is that we understood technology really well. Being a marketing agency, you have to connect a bunch of different things together, CRMs and email marketing, and there are handoffs between those things. And after somebody closes, you've got to do all the client delivery tasks and the administrative stuff. So like thinking about the entire customer journey and leveraging a bunch of different systems like HubSpot or Salesforce or Asana or MailChimp, like in connecting all those dots seemed to make sense. And so the first iteration of SpeakerFlow was a coaching program where we'd sit down with an expert and their team if they had one, and what are some of the features that you're looking for and what do you actually want to be doing with the business? Create a strategy so you can take action on it, i.e. strategy plus action, right? So we'd organize, right, the strategy of like, what is it that you actually want to accomplish? Here's all the tech that we can use to piece that together. So we'll set that up. Don't worry about it. We'll teach you how to use it. And then we can layer in the process. But a few challenges came up. The first, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is if somebody was working with us for an extended period of time, by the time they were done working with us, they might have 20 different applications at their disposal. We would build all of those automations. So if we were to give hand that off to them, which we've tried, they would have to maintain all of those automations because stuff breaks, things change, and you would have to, the more you automate, the more you have to maintain, basically. So that means they were tied to us forever. Now, most applications, in order to even benefit from a lot of automation, you're not paying for their free tier, or rather not paying for their free tier. You're paying for their middle or their upper tiers of things. And so people would have a small mortgage of all of these technologies that they were paying for to make their lives, quote unquote, easier with a lot more maintenance. And so even though they had process now, without us, they weren't using it. And honestly, like, we wanted to create a business where people, if they got what they needed, could flock the nest. I know it's not always the best business model, but we believe that's how you create the most value for people. If they saw true transformation and they got what they needed, how can they continue to run their business without us in the picture so that they can continue to do their thing, right? Grow their team and have other people manage it for them, because it was a lot more difficult doing that with 20 different tools. And so we went through this coaching program and we learned a ton, and we learned all about the right processes to build for sales and marketing and operations for these people's businesses. But at some point we realized we didn't want to be the ones delivering anymore. Austin and I, my partner. And while we had a team for selling and for marketing, we didn't have a team to do the client delivery. And so then we started asking the question, well, how do we standardize knowing all of the tech out there? Like, how do I train somebody to know every CRM out there, every email marketing tool out there, every project management tool out there, to then sync all of that stuff up, pick the right ones for the clients? Like, you have to have some depth of experience using all of that tech to be able to even head down that path. And so
that's a simple Craigslist ad. I think you can find anybody.
Yeah, is
like
that simple Craigslist ad? I can just like throw that up. Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
Marketplace, grab somebody. Yeah. So like we realized like we weren't even eating our own dog food. Like we're systems people, yet we don't have a system for delivering for our clients on a regular basis. It changes depending on what their needs are and so on. But what we knew is that regardless if somebody was using HubSpot or Salesforce or Pipedrive, if you're in the thought leadership space, you got to keep track of all the same stuff. If you do speaking, it's event details. If you do consulting, it's consulting details. If you sell books, you got to know how many books you sold. Like, it's pretty textbook of what you want to keep track of in just, let's say, the one example of a CRM. And so this is when we realized in order for us to scale, we needed to create our own technology. So we partnered up with a company to put an operating system together, like 60 different apps all under one roof, and then pre-customize that for our industry so we could take the guesswork out of it. But what this meant is we started to dilute our offer, because as a startup, we were kind of figuring out where do we best fit into the mix. So we had this operating system now, and we had this coaching program, and we created another software to find speaking gigs to make that easy. And we partnered up with some people to create some different courses. We're just testing the waters to feel out like, where are we most impactful? And before you know it, we had like 6 different things we could sell. And then how do you, when you attract a new lead, sell them 6 different things? And how do you even know what they're interested in? And this is when we started to realize, like, while we have a very successful business, we are not going to be as successful as we want to unless we have a single offer that we can point people to. And so this is kind of with the work that we were doing with Brian and just some other marketing coaches. And honestly, our main business coach, his name is Brad. He was like, a startup is no longer in the startup phase when you have one thing that you're selling and you're scaling that. And that's when you get into the growth phase. And that hit Austin and I like a ton of bricks, because we had already been pondering this. How do we have one offer? And so basically now SpeakerFlow is one offer. There's just different ways you can work with us. DIY, done with you, or done for you. And so we're able to sell. You can have the system by yourself if you want it, or we can set it all up for you, migrate you from all your other places. That's the done with you. Or we can actually build a strategy around your entire business and systemize in line with what your goals are. So we don't end up just building systems for the sake of systems. They actually produce an outcome that you want. And this is how we were able to bridge the gap of business strategy and business systems, because now we can give them those good ideas that they need, and then help them plug that into a system so they can actually start getting results from it.
Oh yeah. How much have you found is had to be educating the folks to even know they need it,
or need this? Yeah.
Or is it like a simple getting in front of them, they're like, oh, of course I need this. What balance of that have you seen?
Oh man, there's a mix. It's like a mixed bag of anything. So there's this funny story. Actually heard this from a speaker at the National Speakers Association. So if any of you are listening and want a community of speakers, they're a great place to start. His name is Mark Levy. He's a differentiation expert. And he was on stage and he was telling this story about selling mushrooms, basically. And he's like, I don't care how good your mushrooms are. I don't care about the features or the benefits of your mushrooms. I hate mushrooms. So don't sell me mushrooms. And so what the whole idea of that story is, you need to sell and market to the people who are experiencing the pain that you solve. And it's okay if people aren't aware yet of that pain and what the solution is. And sure, you could push a boulder up a mountain and try and sell them on why they need, let's say, business systems in our case. But the long and short of it is, if they're not at a point in their business where they're even thinking about systems, they're not for us yet. And so we actually had to get comfortable only marketing to individuals who got that idea. So I'm not trying to convince anybody that they need business systems, because when things are relevant, things are relevant and you're going to go and seek that solution for that problem that you're experiencing. And so often our ideal client isn't somebody who's just starting out or trying to figure out their business or anything like that. It's somebody who's probably already making close, if not above 6 figures, doing speaking, coaching, and consulting, who have hit a plateau. They're constantly reinventing their wheel. Or maybe for those who are so busy that they're ready to pull their hair out of their head because they can't continue to, or they can't find staff to help them out and don't even have a process for things. And they're really realizing that I have a business here that I need to have systems and process around. What solutions can I find for that problem? So I think initially we did try and push the boulder up the mountain, and I would get frustrated in sales calls when somebody would be like, I don't even understand what systems are, why I need them. And I'd be like, what do you mean you don't know what systems are? Like, I'm going to shake you, you know? But eventually you have to stop that fight because the reality is it's just not relevant for that individual yet. And so long as you're producing value in other ways and sharing stories, like when it becomes relevant for them, they're going to raise their hand and realize that you're probably the only solution out there that they can go to solve that particular problem.
Yeah. And I imagine your ideal client is that one who's, yeah, they're doing fine business wise in terms of, income, like you talk about. They've hit that 6 figures, they're making money, but they have zero time. The whole thing, they about want to quit because, like, is this really what I signed up for?
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And we've all been there as entrepreneurs, and the answer is yes, that is what you really signed up for. But how do you alleviate, that pain so that, it doesn't suck as much?
Right. And so how are you getting in front of those folks? I know you've mentioned the partnership. I know you have a great podcast, you and Austin. What's been that mindset and going and, getting in front of people until they're ready?
Yeah. So honestly, like we started the company, whether we knew it or not, off of partnership marketing. We partnered up with the National Speakers Association, a place where we knew our ideal market was highly concentrated. And then we tap into other resources like that, like the International Coaching Federation, the International Association of Speakers Bureaus, and different people like Grant Baldwin or Brian Harris, who serves a very similar market. They're solving kind of adjacent problems to the industry where our strength isn't their strength, that we can come into and provide a solution for. And so basically the number one way we've attracted all of our business is through partnership marketing. And how do we create content together? How do I get in front of your list? How do we do webinars? Creating content. Of course, we have a background in content marketing and SEO and some paid advertising, so that might make up some periphery. We have like 50,000 page views a month at the moment, for 200 articles that are still actualizing. So that'll get to probably about 100K, visitors in the next like 3 to 6 months, we expect. So, primarily though, it's partnership marketing. How do we leverage content, provide some value for people, get them at least aware of us, and then use lead capture and then nurturing past that point to keep people in the loop? And I think this is where like most people might go wrong in generating with their business, is they think of like the sale immediately rather than the entire relationship. Like all I'm interested in is just let me get your email and let's have some conversations. I'm going to provide so much value in my nurturing and in the emails that I send on a regular basis and in the webinars that I run internally that you're not ever going to want to leave the list simply because we're not selling you anything. We're just value. And eventually that trust builds up over a period of time combined with the relevancy of the problem that we solve. And they know that when I need systems, the first thing they think of is SpeakerFlow. And I think more than anything, it's just about staying top of mind past the point of, lead generation.
Yeah. And I think a combo there too, because you are doing all of that stuff, just a flood of useful, great information to stay top of mind. Also, like you've said, there's not many people, if anybody else, really providing what you provide to this particular audience. But I think there's also, it's also important that in all of this content, we hear that a lot. We lead with value and just give and do all of that. And you should, but at the same time, there's nothing in the world wrong with making sure that during that process, they know how to work with you. Like that's whatever that means, whatever version. And that doesn't mean you have to go crazy with selling, but also don't be afraid either. Like, hey, has this been awesome? Great. You want to work with this? Awesome. Here's how you work with it. Like, then that sales conversation just becomes answering a couple of questions and getting going, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't have to do any actual like cold selling. There's no education involved in the process because they already are aware of how you solve it. It's just logistics that you're ironing it out and fears or questions that they might have. And on that point of like making the ask, like we just do really simple stuff, especially in lead nurturing. Like just this last week, I'll send an email telling a story about how we might have helped one of our coaching clients achieve a certain outcome. So we were talking about like the preemptive strike in selling, letting people know about all the other ways you work with people so that they're aware, so that when they buy from you the first time, they're kind of preempted to buy from you in the future. And so the strategy that we helped one of our coaching clients implement made him 100 grand in 3 months, basically, because his clients came back knowing that they could pay for consulting. So we tell this story and we give people some real tactics that they can employ in this email. And I have at the end, P.S. If you want to join our accelerator program where we coach you on stuff exactly like this, reply and let me know. Got 6 replies in my inbox that day and 6 new sales conversations from people that have been on my list for a year and a half. And so you don't even need to make promotions all the time. You're just doing small reminders that this is how you work with me throughout the process. And it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that, this is a trend I see happening more and more even with companies who start off on the tech side with software and all of that, that they're looping in this coaching aspect to things. It seems to be more and more of a trend. And I think there is a really good way to do that, like you and Austin have done, which is, merging those two things so that it's not these two separate conversations. Like, hey, this is what you get. Some people throw in the coaching with, whatever software, because it's just going to help people use that better, maybe, or vice versa. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that helping aspect that comes in, man, it's just so smart because the problems that your potential client is going to have, right? Even with the greatest solution that you're providing. And so when you can basically preemptively go in there and go like, okay, but we're here for you, here's how you walk it through. Man, just from the very beginning, that tackles so many different objections.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're acting as a true guide at that point. You've seen or have lived through what they have yet to go through, and so you can guide them through that to see transformation. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of other people consider coaching as a part of their offering, because the technology alone by itself isn't going to help many people. Like you got to have some technical acumen, you got to have some geekiness, like you and I might have, to go and play with it and get value from it, but like if you don't have the behavioral reinforcement, your own mental roadblocks removed, the clarity that we all need trying to build, let's say, business systems in this context, it's not going to be as impactful. It's not going to be transformative. And I think companies are thinking more these days in terms of how do we help people transform rather than how do we get some consumers to buy some stuff that they might never use and then continue buying some stuff that they might never use. Like, some more forward thinking companies are coming forward that are more purpose driven than just let's sell a bunch of crap.
Well, and what I love about that too is that not only is that just better to do, it leads to being more successful. Wow, who would have thought, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Groundbreaking.
Right. So give us an example too of exactly like that, the systems that you've put in place and you've got, the tech side of things. Exactly, I guess give us a snapshot of how that's going to help a specific, somebody who's an author and speaker out there. What are you actually putting in place for them?
Yeah, for sure. So usually it depends on where they're kind of coming from. Let's just go through an example of the most common scenario where people need to make money, because that's usually one of the biggest pain points when people are looking for better systems. Is I need to make more money. For others, they might be busy already. That might not be a thing. And that's more operational stuff. Like when a deal is closed, having all of the tasks automatically generate so that you know exactly what needs to get done to deliver this one thing, for example. You're removing all the guesswork. So let's start out with the most common, which is probably like 80% of people, they need to make more money. So we think of business, at least for our clients, we dumb it way down. It can get way more complex than this. So I'll add to that. But very simply, there are 3 main departments in all of our businesses. You have growth, And this is sales and marketing combined. These things need to be in harmony together. Most people split those departments in two. Of course, you've heard about the tension between sales and marketing efforts on larger companies. It's growth. They need to be united. Then you've got experience, which is how you deliver for your clients, and your own experience of delivering for your clients so that you don't let anything slip through the cracks. And then administrative stuff. We call this back of office, basically. So like IT and HR and billing and legal and all of the other stuff that we kind of have to deal with just as running our businesses, right? Most of the back of office stuff gets outsourced, though. We've got CPAs and people to help with. We've got people who recruit generally. We've got, who help you legal stuff. So most of the back of office stuff kind of just gets delegated in a natural business setting anyway. So people's biggest two things that need optimizing are growth and experience. So for somebody who needs to make money, well, the first issue is I can't find leads for people who can buy from me. So you go down that path of like, okay, well, what's the issue there? And ultimately, it's they don't know who their ideal clients are. So we start with exercises there immediately. What's your ICP, your ideal client profile? And based on that, do they have money to buy from you? If yes, great. Here's how you find their information. So now here's a prospecting process. So now that you have a way to generate leads, assuming that they don't have a strong kind of marketing presence yet, that's the fastest way to make sales is just through outbound effort. Now you need a business development process. And most people are like, well, what's business development? And this is where coaching is so valuable, is because you get labels to different things that you might not have known about. And business development is the act of taking leads who know nothing about you and nurturing them over a period of time until they raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested. Let's have a conversation. These are quote unquote your leads that you're just following up with until they say, I want to have a sales call. So we have a process. It's called watertight selling. It's a series of touch points over a period of time that we just plug into their CRM that we've custom built for them so that they can just follow what the system is telling them. There's no guesswork involved. Just do what the system says and you will be successful. So now all of a sudden they're booking meetings. And so business development turns into sales development, where now you have to run the call. You have to know how to overcome objections. You have to know how to stick to your pricing. You have to know how to negotiate. You have to know how to preempt them. And so we're moving through the pipeline. And then now you finally got that person to say yes, they're excited to work with you. Well, how are you going to deliver for them? And this is where the handoff between sales and operations, or experience rather, happens, where they've said yes. Well, now you've got to generate an invoice and a contract and maybe book your flights and do all of these other 20 different tasks that need to get done depending on the revenue stream you just sold. And wouldn't it be nice if all of those tasks would just appear automatically from your system every time you sold something, so you had no guesswork involved? And so basically what we're doing is we're kind of moving people through their own customer journey and eliminating where friction exists. So if there's friction in knowing how to find leads, we're going to solve that problem. But now there's going to be friction in how to nurture them. So let's solve that problem. And now there's going to be friction sending contracts automatically or generating tasks automatically. And so systems are a matter of layering things in based on a strategy. What's the most important things to tackle right now? And then taking action on that actual strategy, and not just creating systems for the sake of systems. So to answer your question, we're starting basically with their own customer journey and then helping them build systems all the way until people are raving fans working with them, so that they can build a huge referral engine on the back of it, so that they can spend less time prospecting and more time doing content creation, which fuels the lead generation. And so eventually this engine gets created where now you don't have to go find your own leads, because you've got a ton of referrals, you've got a ton of inbound stuff coming in through your website, but it all might start with that initial prospecting process if we have nothing to start with.
That is so strong. That's awesome. I mean, yeah, even for the folks who you do have to kind of educate, like they know they've got the problem. I mean, wow. Like to go through that and go, so this is handled for me. Like this is all put into place for me. That's huge because, as entrepreneurs, whether we're speakers and coaches or any other kind of entrepreneur, so many of us are just like, man, just tell me what to do. I'll do it all day long. Right. Give me that list and that formula. I'll follow it all day long, but I don't want to sit here for 6 months and try to figure out which one's the best and all of that. That's so solid. I love it.
Yeah, it's taken a while to get to that point, of course. 3 years of what are the best ways and what works, what doesn't, what are the core things people need. And so we're just the value in us is that we've just figured it out for them. And based on all of the past success we've seen our clients go through, we can just we see the industry at scale. And then from what works or what doesn't, we just refine our own processes for the people we work with. And now they can just take action on a strategy rather than spinning their wheels, just trying to figure out how in the world to make more money if that's their core problem.
Oh yeah, and that only gets better, right? Like that only improves, as you
like a
see
fine
more.
Wine.
Right. Exactly. Last thing I just want to touch on is really that the podcast that you're doing. What's the thought process there in terms of how that connects into lead flow for you, content creation, and all of that?
Yeah, honestly, Austin and I were just talking about this earlier today because Fridays are our podcast day. I just got out of 3 other podcasts, so that's why I'm talkative at this point. I'm just in the zone. So, so anyway, we were just talking about this, and we were looking at our show stats and all this stuff, and it's like, man, I could give a shit less about our podcast show stats. I just don't care. Like, I want to create amazing content for people, and that's it. And the value in our podcast, quite honestly, aside from like learning a ton, man, like the amount of people we get to talk to, like yourself or other experts that we bring into the show. I don't know about you, but like running a podcast outside of just building the business itself has got to be one of the most educational experiences I have ever gotten in my life. And so aside from my own like personal like joy of just learning a bunch, we're able to translate that knowledge to our clients and to our email list and the people that are already interested in it. So it's more leverage for us to be perceived as valuable because we actually are valuable for the people that are already interested in working with us. And also the being able to repurpose your content forever across all of your top of funnel streams or pull from stories. Like I think we have 85 episodes done. I think 82 are live, 3 in the hopper, and we have about another 10 ahead of us. So we're almost on show 100. I have a story that I can tell people for almost every scenario that comes across our desk. I can just say, yeah, I was talking to Jason Croft the other day and we had this crazy conversation about how strategy matters so much. And one thing he told me, like all of a sudden I have this ability to tell stories, the experience I've had running a podcast, which strengthens your trust factor and gives you more of that experience basically. So all of that to say, the podcast really for us is leverage to build more trust within the people who are already attracted to us. And then just to fill our top of funnel content machines, like running webinars and pulling stories from it or social media. And quite honestly, podcasting, when you think about it, is really simple partnership marketing. What you and I both know going into this show is when this goes up live, I'm going to share it to my audience and everybody at SpeakerFlow who's a part of our list, and they're going to know about you and know about strategy plus action, and they might subscribe to the show. And I know you're going to share it to your list, and we're going to tag each other on social media forever. And so we're going to get exposure. And so the beauty about podcasting, particularly in my opinion, is you just get this really cool partnership marketing engine happening out there where others are sharing your content, and if you repurpose that, I'll tag you in it later and you're going to share it again, and it really just feeds that top of funnel engine so you don't have to maybe focus on new content all of the time. Like, don't get me wrong, you want to be producing new content, but it really fills up that top of funnel so that you're constantly exposed to new audiences. So outside of the intrinsic value of just sharing this with our clients and the people that are already attracted to us, I think honestly, like leveraging it as a partnership marketing vehicle for deeper relationships, like who knows where you and I go past this point, and all the other podcasts we've done, we now have deeper relationships, partnerships, and getting in front of each other's audiences. And there's just so much value in creating depth of a relationship around the podcast that's where I see the most value in it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought up each of those because it goes so many layers deep, right? There is that. Number one, it's just fun and amazing. Like it fills my soul, right? Like, because that's what I enjoy in life is connecting with folks, learning, like you talked about. But you can also tie it to so many specific business, things that are cases. That make it a benefit. I love that, to be specific about, I've got a story around each of this and I can use that here. Like just to be conscious of that as you approach it and you go into, if you are going to, put together a podcast or just show up on other people's podcasts, that's a huge deal. For me, I tell people how much it's just such a great resource too. I mean, I can bring on my ideal client, and have them in there, or somebody who has an audience of my ideal clients, right? I can bring them on the show and build that relationship, because all of those elements are there of that mutual benefit, and it just makes the whole thing easier, right? And it's a reciprocal thing too that I have. If I have somebody I've just connected with, and they're like, "Oh, I need to introduce you to so and so and so and so," and I don't have maybe that person that I can think of right then that I need to introduce them to. But what I can do is go like, what I can do? If you want to come on the show, I would love to have this conversation and put you in front of my audience and see, it just, again, there's so many layers to it that's so strong. And again, after the fact, the evergreenness of the content as well is huge.
Yeah.
Man, I love it. Well, this has been a blast, man. I'm just...
Dude, yeah, this has been awesome. I feel like we talked for, what are we at, like minute 45 already? Holy crap, where'd time go? What'd you do?
Oh my gosh, man.
It just melted away.
I know. This is
awesome.
This is such a blast. Ever since I saw you on Brian's Shop Talk there, really dug what you're doing, and I love your approach. It's helped me kind of reframe some things in my business and really get purposeful with stuff. And I love to just have these conversations, and whatever little part I can do to get that word out for you is great. Who's your ideal person who needs to reach out to you, and how do they do so?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you're an expert, you deem yourself as such, you're out there speaking, you're coaching, you're consulting, you're an author, you know who your market is, you've got something to sell, but you're just experiencing friction, making all of it happen and running the business, then we're probably a good fit. We can help you systemize some things to make things happen. So best way to reach out is Taylor with 2 R's, Taylorr at SpeakerFlow.com, or just go to SpeakerFlow.com.
Perfect. Taylor, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. We'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you want help creating authority-building video content, or even a client-generating show of your own, go to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy in Action.